Yo, this is Daryl Jace for TPE going over a hand history of Chris Moon.
Hey
Um,
everybody, take five, Daryl. This is our fifth or sixth try on the cold open so far.
what tourney is this? I don't remember.
This is a mini F tops 33 multi-entry. I think you could max out at 3 entries, and it had a ridiculous field. I want to say it was 17,000 in the field.
Nice.
Yeah, it was. I made a decently deep run, but I know for a fact toward the end I fizzled really hard, and it could be being card dead, but I'm pretty sure it's also not picking up on spots as well as I should.
For sure.
So this week's gonna be fun. Where normally I'm doing the hand history review and telling everybody what I would do differently, and I get to just sit back and let Daryl just pick apart everything I was doing wrong and tell me what I should be doing. So it's a nice change of pace.
For sure. Let's run it through. So this hand you get queens, you raise, you see bet, he raises, you get it in, and you lose.
You do not win. Yes.
Yeah. Need to win these hands when you have the edge.
Yep. It's tough to do.
Yeah, just gotta practice and get better.
It's okay. I get it in bad in 2 seconds. So
Yeah, you made up for it here. For sure. That was obviously pretty standard. I mean, unless this guy's really nitty, I don't think we can fold.
no, I mean even if he is, I think I still probably just have to get it in. With 11 bigs, when am I ever going to see a hand bigger than Ace Jack? Although I could wait 2 hands and maybe jam up any 2 randoms on the button if it's folded to me. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I still like getting it in, and also too this was one of 3 entries of this specific tournament I was in. And also on the bulk of a Sunday, I was 15 tabling or whatever it was. So I'm sure a lot of what went into this hand too was I just looked down. I was like, oh, I have 11 bigs and I have Ace Jack, and I don't even know who opened. Who cares? Just get it in.
Yeah.
And that's not great logic, but that's I think what happened here. So
There's some regs you could actually fold this to. There's a bunch of regs that just never raise fold under 20 bigs. They're just never do it, and when they raise here, it's just always just some nutted hand or something.
yeah, I mean in a mini off tops with 17,000 people in the field, I don't know how many regs I'm going to run into at a table, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. And
whatever, I won the pot. That's all that matters.
For sure.
Who got the chips? Me.
No, I didn't. I was just generally speaking. Obviously,
Oh,
I
I'm
didn't apply there.
totally being facetious too. I'm
Okay.
kidding. I'm telling you, man, we should take all the screwed up portions of this video that we've tried so far and just make a blooper reel for part 7 or whatever number we get to.
I wish we could get that the sequence where I was calling you and couldn't hear you, and then you were
for
calling.
45 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we should say the system audio of just you for 10 minutes. Do you hear me? Do you hear me? Damn it! Why can't he hear me? I don't get it.
That's so funny. So you have this Ace King suited.
Yeah. And when we've kind of gone over this hand before, but we're kind of debating between just shoving this pre or making a 3-bet, and I kind of thought with 23.5 bigs, I could potentially 3-bet and have some sort of perceived fold equity. Villain thinks that he could potentially shove and fold, get me to fold. I don't know if I don't know how well that holds, but I thought 23.5 is just a little bit too big to be jamming.
Yeah.
Such a quality hand is Ace King. I want to get action from Ace King, so I went in for the 3-bet instead.
Yeah.
I remember.
I kind of like jamming versus bad players because they're more likely to look you up with Ace Queen Ace Jack. It's weird in a lot of in spots where people are supposed to have tight ranges, the fish are way too loose as far as push fold and reshoves or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But the spots where they're supposed to have loose ranges, they're just way too tight. I think it's one of the spots where mini up tops, if you jam, Ace Jack might look you up or something. But with that said, I'm still just 3-betting small without that read.
Yeah, I agree.
But I just think it's kind of interesting because I remember when I first learned like push fold math, I was just like, okay, so fish are always just way tighter in all spots, and I just used to shove wider, and then they would call with like king 10 in a spot I need like ace jack or ace queen to call or something.
Yeah. Are you shoving ace queen here?
I'm not shoving ace queen here ever.
So you three betting it?
Probably just flatting. I'm the school of C3. Just like seeing flops a lot. I don't really like three betting unless if you know he's like flatting a bunch of shit you dominate. It's pretty good actually.
Yeah.
So that's probably the case too, especially in this tourney.
Mm-hmm.
This is like a pretty special tourney where like the average player is just way worse than like the average player in say like a big 55 or the 26 on tilt or like any other tourney.
I agree.
So yeah, I guess I'd be way more inclined to three bet this tourney. So this dude donks pretty small, and I remember talking about this hand and saying that so if he has an ace, you basically stack him no matter what you do, so it doesn't really
Yep.
matter.
Yep.
So we're just like thinking about the best line versus like air and pocket pairs and shit.
Yeah, and before we spend another 15 minutes crafting what the best line would be, it's pretty funny what I end up doing. But yeah, I think like looking back at it now, I think flatting and then like getting it in on like any turn is pretty much the best.
Yeah, for sure. Or you can min raise like a boss.
uh,
Creative lines for the win.
it's just so weird because I always take these lines that I think are just so counterintuitive in like a field like this, knowing that it's gonna work out just because the people I'm playing are just like that terrible.
He probably floated like king queen of diamonds. Um, so he checks here, and what do you think about? I think we were talking about betting like 4K here or something.
Yeah, I mean, like based on the result we see, I really like betting 4K. But I thought like anything he's calling me with on the flop, especially when he's going to be getting like 3-1 to make a call on the turn, he's going to be calling on the turn with just about anything. It does not appear that that's what happened. But here I know I jam in, but I guess I guess against a fish, like it's got to be so obvious that, or I guess against like a reg, it would be so obvious that I had a hand if I bet like 1/6 pot on the turn.
Yeah.
But I guess maybe he wouldn't pick up on that, and he'd give me like one more call with sevens or tens or whatever the hell he had. But
Yeah, he's probably like shipping his bigger pocket pairs too, like jacks plus and shit. So if he has a pocket pair, it's like sevens, eights, fives, or something.
yeah, I agree.
So yeah, I kind of like the 1/6 pot bet.
In retrospect, yeah, I do too. But I just couldn't foresee like any hand that he could just fold to me on the turn after calling a min raise on the flop. But
You
that's
you gotta consider the 1/6 pot bet when you're 15 tabling. I mean, if you're not, you're just losing all the value.
yeah. If that's not one of my buttons when I'm 15 tabling, I miss out on that sometimes.
This was a pretty good three bet spot, in my opinion.
I agree. I think if I remember, I did three bet here. And I think even if I didn't three bet, although I'm pretty sure I did, looking at it now, I would, especially because if you note the stacks two to my left, I have Danny Negreanu with like 19 bigs, and I have KLA or KJA Hoosier to his left with 6.5. And I don't like flatting and like inducing a potential squeeze spot for any of these two, even though KLA doesn't have any fold equity.
He's
Like,
he's gonna be shipping like 20% of the time or something. Like any pair shipping and like a whole bunch of broadways and shit. And then when that happens, this guy's just gonna re-ISO a bunch. So it's not
yeah,
good.
so like I like three betting here instead, just because I don't get stuck in that spot as frequently. I just three bet, and like even if I three bet and like KLA Hoosier jams over, it puts Maniac in like a weird spot because he's gonna have to call or shove with a three better behind him. So that's a lot tougher of a spot, I think, that for him anyway, than if I flatted.
Yeah. Also, if you were gonna three bet in this spot, it's probably like the best hand to three bet bluff with. Like just having like an ace and a jack blocker being suited. Like
Yeah, and there's a bunch of times too where like he just hoods me, and like we see try flops, and I should win most of the time just because I'm in control of the pot, or like if we do flop something, then sometimes we have the best hand, or like we'll flop a lot of draws and whatnot. So it's easier to play post when we're in control of the pot post than it is like if we were to just flat here, in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure.
And you said when we talked about it the first time too, like when I flat here, my hand plays pretty face up because my flatting range should include hands like this and also hands like king queen and king jack, etc., etc. So like when
Yeah.
face cards hit the board, we're not expecting to get as much action out of like when we just flat.
Yeah. It's kind of weird though, 'cause like this is like such a it's so different than any other tourney. Like this like applies more versus like a reg, but like player in like a tourney with 17,000 people in it, like $30 buy-in, just doesn't really. How much are they really thinking? You know?
Yeah, that's and like not to pat ourselves on the back, but I like the way the format this video we're doing because I think it's a stake that many TPE members play much more often than like you or I do. But it's like putting like us, like what would we do in this scenario, like into a setting like that, which isn't like necessarily the most comfortable setting for us when we're like playing a bunch of randoms instead of people we know.
Yeah,
But
for
I
sure.
think like the analysis and like what we'll go over will be like pretty sound and like apply to the majority of the people watching this video. So I mean like we at the site love Big Dog Pocket Fives and he's killing it right now, but when he's playing like 109s and like 215s and he's playing the Tuesday 1K, like the Tuesday 1K doesn't really apply to the stakes that a lot of people on this site are playing. So
Yeah, for sure.
it's good that we're going to get a couple videos in with like these $33 like donk minefields that people have to plow through every day.
Yeah, for sure. I think your three bet sizing's too old. I mean, I guess it's okay. This is about as big as I'd make it in this spot. Hold on a second.
Good.
Yeah, so anyways, I was saying 4,800 is probably like the biggest I'd go, but I'm probably going like 42, 43-ish, but
That's
whatever.
pretty interesting because I mean, I know I'm kind of in the like the older school in terms of like three bet sizing, but like I've always been taught like my barometer should be like around 5x and then plus or minus based on like my position and like our relative depth stack sizes. But like everything that I've been hearing of late is like 5x is like the highest, and then or excuse me, if they open for like 2x when you three bet, the highest should be like 5x. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's interesting talking to someone who three bets a lot smaller, and like I know Big Dog three bets a lot smaller in a lot of his videos that I've been watching. So,
Yeah.
but
The reason I three bet smaller is just because small three bets will have like a really large amount of fold equity still. And when people flat, especially when we have position, it's just like we bet 1/3 and they just fold unless they have something. Just people like if making it 4,300 didn't get a lot of folds and wasn't like so if I wanted to bluff in this spot and 4,300 just wouldn't get any folds, like I wouldn't do it. It's just making it like 4,300, it still gets a ton of folds, and then when they call, it's just like, okay, I get to bet 1/3 here, and he folds like 50, 60% of the time or something.
yeah, I see the logic in it.
But
I just like
I'm fine with 4,800 too. Like, I think as long as people are within like a decent band, it's okay. Just like I think anything over like 4,800 5K would be bad, and anything under like 3,500 would be bad.
I can see that. I think the only time I'd be making it more than 4,800 is if it was like a small blind. Like I'd be out of position post, and I want to like charge him as much as I can
Yeah,
pre to see a flop, especially if they're like really peel heavy. And I'm like, well, if you're going to peel me like 60, 70% of the time anyway, then I'm just going to make it bigger so that I win a bigger pot when I win.
yeah. I should say like when I say 4,800 5K, I just mean in this specific spot rather than you know in general. I just mean in this specific spot. That's like the biggest I'd go.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, so let's wrap it up from here. Sorry too. So
Okay.
okay, so you three bet. Oh, this dude cold calls.
Yeah, I remember. El Pervo. We see him in a lot of hands, so like it's pretty good that we should like profile him in one of these hands too.
Yeah, for sure.
He does a lot of weird shit.
He checks and you check back. Um,
Yeah, in retrospect, we don't like it. I know that. I know we want to make it like between like 3,500 and like 4,800, somewhere in that range, just to like I mean, when we talked about this the first time, your logic was sound when you told me that you don't think he would fold like a pocket pair to a one barrel, which I kind of now agree with. I was kind of just like under the impression that calls on the flop would only be like bigger aces, which there shouldn't be too many, but bigger aces or sometimes dominated flush draws, but that's such a really thin part. Like his dominated flush draws should only be like king queen of clubs, like king ten of clubs. We have the jack of clubs, so it's like hard for him to have those. But yeah, you said you would include pocket pairs if I make it small enough, and I kind of
Yeah.
see that now.
Yeah. Also, I think there's some relatively high percentage chance that he has like a worse ace in his range. By relatively high, I mean like not very likely, but for this tourney, I think
Yeah, that's
people
true.
who like play these stakes see like random shit like this all the time too.
I agree.
So, anyways, yeah, I like betting here,
Yeah,
but
between like 3,500 and like 5K, somewhere in that range, I would say would be a good idea here.
yeah, for sure.
And it builds a pot for later too. Like if I'm gonna get two or three streets out of them, and I'm gonna try and get stacks in the middle,
I think
like
you're
we can.
most likely going bet check bet on a lot of boards, but
I think so too. I can't see. I think maybe like in this hand, I was just crafting that I was gonna get two streets. I should try and get the later two and make it seem a lot less like I have an ace. But I don't. I don't know like what this guy thinks anyway. So I don't know how relevant that is. Like bet check bet. I try and avoid that line against regs, and I know he's not a reg, but like that line against regs just like plays pretty face up. Like I have an ace basically. Um,
yeah,
but yeah, okay. So let's go ahead. I like betting the flop here. I think we both agree on that.
yeah. And the turn comes as played, and so his range is just like all those pocket pairs, probably less likely to have an ace now, and that's a kind of crappy card for his pocket pairs.
Yeah, I think the only good card, like the only way that's a good card is if he had like a king queen suited, and that's just about it.
Yeah,
Unless he's like really spastic and he just cold called with like king queen there, like king queen off,
yeah,
which I wouldn't put it past so many people in this field. But like otherwise, it should be a pretty crappy card. So regardless of like how terrible that card is as played, I think you have to like go for the next two streets regardless. So
yeah,
I think on this particular instance, I make it like 5,800.
yeah.
And I think like as played, just whatever size I make it on the turn, it should just be bigger than what I would normally make it. Just because if I'm gonna get streets now, I might as well make them like more expensive when I get paid.
Yeah, I don't know if 5,800 is necessarily optimal for the turn, but I feel like it sets up a lot better river spots than like say 4,500 or something.
Yeah, because I think my plan here is most rivers are good for me. Like there's not too many rivers where I'm gonna like not continue with my hand. So if I'm gonna try and get stacks in the middle, if I make it like 5,800, that leaves him with like 18.2. Is
Yeah.
that yeah, like 18.2, 19.2. So we'll have a pot of like 24K,
Yeah.
23K,
Yeah, I think
and
it's
I'll be
a
able to shove in.
I think it's important not to just like analyze the profitability of like decision on the turn here, but also like look at the river too. And like all spots, like sometimes you can make like bad flop C bets that set up like good turn barrels or good
Hmm.
turn and river barrels or something.
I agree.
But yeah, I think that's something that people watching this video should be doing. Like looking into future streets, like the deeper you could think, like obviously the better. Like I think that's pretty straightforward though. But anyways, so you bet 5,200, which I think is like the perfect bet size. I don't know. I really like the stack size on the river.
I like the fact like his stack is smaller in the pot on the river, and by enough that like it's still thick enough that I could like be perceived as bluffing, but it's small enough that he can be calling off like a little bit wider than he normally would be if it was a larger stack to the pot.
Yeah. Just
But I totally think I like misplayed this river as played. Like I think I'm just gonna chalk this up to playing like a bunch of tables at a time and just like clicking a button instead of like actually really thinking it over on the river.
yeah, I'm a huge fan of excuses. I think they're really good.
Yeah, I mean, in this particular instance, like we can at least craft a lesson and like a we can look forward to like making better decisions in the future. But I think on the river here, I just like clicked a button and just like made it 50% pot or whatever it was. I think I made it like 11-8.
Yeah, cool. And he folds. Oh well.
Yeah.
Fold 9-7 suited. Not a fan, obviously. Just thinking like these really soft tourneys, you're like not ever gonna get three bet, or people are just gonna play fitter foldish post just open all day.
I see that.
Queen 10 sucks though, so fine with that. It's just those suited hands. What do you think here? Where's this dude?
I think I should have been defending here at least, if not putting in a 3-bet, just because of like with this stack, I don't think I'm going to get like 4-bet shipped on too often, and he's obviously opening the button so wide. I think this was kind of like an autopilot mistake that I made here, where I just wasn't paying close enough attention. Um, so yeah, I think this is one spot where I'd be 3-betting or at least defending. I like 3-betting better than defending, better than folding.
Yeah, it's hard for me to fold suited hands that could flop straights. That doesn't really happen too often. But I would like 3-betting better if he was like um pretty good post flop or something, just gonna like C bet a ton and two barrel a ton or something. Or if he had like a really high fold of 3-bet, I would just 3-bet.
Mm-hmm.
Or it's pretty game flow dependent as well. Like, I don't know. Like if you maybe felt like your 3-bet wouldn't get, like, I don't know, if you've been 3-betting a lot or something and you felt like he'd play back at some point. Like
I
obviously.
had, I had 3-bet him once with the ace jack of clubs that we saw that I
Yeah.
know of. So maybe that like adds to the argument for defending instead of you know.
Yeah, it's just like one hand though. So and you're like early position. But so I don't know. Uh anyways, here's a spot. I remember you just shipped here and I kinda like just 3-betting small versus Dukes. This was the guy who cold called your 3-bet earlier and you
Yep,
had the ace jack of clubs or something.
that's when we had ace jack of clubs. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I like letting him, it seems like he's pretty loose and terrible, so I feel like shoving kind of just lets him off the hook, kind of.
If
Um,
he's like chronically loose though, I mean, I'd probably get a call from like sevens here for 20
yeah,
bigs. If
yeah, that's
if
true.
if we know the level of how loose he is, I mean, obviously if he's just gonna flat everything that we 3-bet here, 3-betting's better. But if he's like a chronic fish where he'll just like call off ace jack here, then I would much prefer just getting him all in and seeing five.
Yeah, I mean, if he's gonna call your reshove just way too light, then probably best just reshove. So you just shove. He has the queens.
So
Not,
it kind of makes our argument moot, but I think that's only one of the like minority of hands that would make our argument
yeah.
like moot there.
And you have the aces, you bet, he calls. Thoughts on turn bet sizing?
Um, so I know in the hand specifically, my thought was to make it small to induce calls from as much of his range as possible. And his range here just looks like it has to just be like weak ass kings, like
Yeah.
king nine suited, king 10, maybe like a king jack type defend hand. Seeing as we have like blockers to what's essentially the nuts on this board. So it's really hard for him to have like an ace jack, ace 10 type of hand that would triple, that would call it like, all three streets for a lot of value. So I was hoping to just get the max, what I thought was going to be the max from him, which was to get three streets like at, small bets
Yeah.
on all three. So
I think it's really good, like your thought process on your bet sizing. I think most people, a lot of people who watch videos, they just see people bet small. They watch like good players play tourneys. They see people bet small. It's like, oh, I'm going to bet small too. That looks cool. And rather than like the way you did it, kind of like breaking down his range, breaking down board textures, future streets, like all that shit like comes into play when you're thinking about bet sizing. Rather than just, I think way too many people just fall into the general line of just always betting small without really thinking about ranges and board texture and all that stuff.
And looking at the size that I'm making it here, it looks like I turned off the buttons too. Like I didn't click like 1/3 or one. I didn't click like the 1/5 or 1/3 pot button or anything like that here. So it looks like I actually like punched in a real number. So yeah. So as far as I can tell from this hand, I was just trying to get calls from like all the kings that are in his range. Which I think his range just has to be a king here. Um, as it's like really hard for him to have an ace. Like I would assume a lot of pocket pairs would have three bet me free, and like I think like sevens would probably have given up on this flop. So I think like his range here is just like he's stuck a king on his forehead basically, and we just have to try and get value out of that. And so then I thought this is the best size to go for to get it.
I think he has a fair bit more of like aces than you think. Like, there's a fair bit of combos of like ace jack, ace 10, ace 9, ace 8, ace 7. I mean, that's like 20
Yep.
combos right there.
Yeah, but
So,
we have it. What do we have it blocked down to though?
yeah,
With
well, with the
one ace left in the
blockers.
deck.
So there's four combos of like ace jack, four combos ace 10 with your blockers, four combos ace 9, four combos ace 8, four combos ace 7, four combos ace 6. Assuming he calls all offsuit. But I don't know if he calls like a6 off and stuff. But you're the big blind. You did. He's the big blind. You did min raise.
Yeah, that's true.
So he still has a fair bit. Like so, if he has like all the ace x off in his range, that's still like 28 combos or something of ace x or something.
And if he does have ace X suited here, it's of clubs and he turned backdoor. But I don't think I was thinking
Yeah,
that clearly on this hand either. But
yeah. So he has a fair bit of aces. How many king combos is there? There's like King Queen, that's 12. King Jack, that's 12. King 10, that's 12. It's already 36 right there. So, I mean, you're definitely right that he has more kings than aces. That's
yeah,
for
he just
sure.
has to from combinatorics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
But I would say it's like maybe 2 or 3 to 1 kings to ace ratio rather than like, you know, never an ace or anything.
yeah, I agree.
So maybe we should scale our bet size a bit bigger then.
What would you make it then? Like 4,200, or even more than what I'm making it.
Maybe, yeah, maybe around like anywhere between like 4 to 5,500 or something. 4K or 5,500, somewhere between there.
Okay. Okay. So I agree. I don't remember what happens on the river here though. I forget what our river play is.
I think he just folds.
Yeah, I think you lose them. The board does get kind of like a little weird for like a person who wouldn't know how to correctly range like what kind of hands I would have here. Like he should know that I never have a three, but I don't know if he does.
You should have the three sometimes, like ace
Ace three, and
three,
that's it.
ace three, like 6-3. You should have some 6-3 in there. I mean, I doubt he's putting you. Well, I'm just saying you probably have some threes in there. Just being nitpicky, whatever.
I really think my only three here is ever ace three, and that's about
Should be opening some suited 6-3 now.
it.
Um,
Not with KLA Hoosier at four bigs and having a reshove stack behind me.
fair enough.
But I mean, obviously, big blind's not thinking on that level at all. So, I mean, I'm barely thinking on that level already this afternoon. So, how could I expect like book face 99 to be thinking on that level either?
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. So I think our river play. What do you think our like river play sizing has to be then here?
So we could pretty much take out most of the crap out of his range. And now like his range is just like basically definitely like exclusively like ace X and king X with some two pair or something. So he has more kings, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But he still has a fair amount of aces, which are calling a pretty big bet.
Yeah, I think an ace like excluding like ace six. like maybe ace seven. Like I think a lot of aces have to make a call here, and I don't even think necessarily that those other aces make laydowns in this situation.
Yeah.
So like,
Should we do it like this? Just be like, figure out what amount we'd bet if he had an ace, then what amount we'd bet if he thought he had a king, and me somewhat more weighted towards the king side, so he has more kings. Think that makes sense?
yeah, I mean we should be significantly more weighted toward the king side. As like we said, he's got three times more kings as he does aces in this spot. Correct?
Yeah.
Did I hear that number right?
Yeah, like 2 to 3 times or something. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So like if he had an ace, I think we'd bet like 12K-ish, right?
Yeah. Yeah. 12 was the number that came to my head immediately.
Yeah. If he had a king, we'd bet like what do we bet if he had a king?
Between 7 and 9.
Yeah. So we should bet around 9K-ish or something.
I was gonna say if I thought he had a king, I would bet 81.99. That's the number that came to my head immediately.
Sounds like a good number.
Yeah. I
So,
always I noticed with you and I though that I always fall on the smaller side. If we were to pick numbers out of a hat in any given situation, I'm consistently like between 800 and 900 shorter than what you would make it. I think at any given point.
yeah, except for pre-flop. But yeah. So yeah, I would go around, I think around 9K would be good, given his range and everything. So you go 81.99. So
Something in there, yeah.
that sounds like a cool number though. I'm super nitpicky about numbers. Like I sit around and I'd take like 5, 10 seconds on hand just figuring out what like the last two digits of my bet should be. Like whether it should be like 12,157 or 12,142 or something.
You'd laugh. I've been playing on the iPoker network now that I've moved over to Canada, and they allow you to punch in fractions of a digit at these numbers. So at like the 501k blind, or no, at the yeah at the 501k blind, I make it 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5.67 just for the heck of making it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Awesome.
Yeah, or like at the 600, 1200, make it like 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.78 or 8, 9 or whatever. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think you'd take like 45 seconds longer on every decision if you knew you got to make decimal points every time too.
yeah. That'd be too tough for me. So I think you bet like 11K here. No, 68, which seems a bit too low. But he folds anyways. So.
Yeah, I think unfortunately that like the fact that we triple barreled means he's pretty much only going to call us with like exclusively his aces, and sometimes like his aces might even get spooked, and that's about it. So, but regardless, I should be making it bigger regardless, because if he's going to fold regardless of the sizing, then I should be making it bigger for the times that
Yeah.
we do get called. Even if the times we get called are like much smaller in terms of percentage than we'd like it to be, I should just always be making it bigger so that we maximize the payoff.
Yeah, I mean, if he's not calling a king regardless, then we should just like optimize versus aces, I guess. I guess he's
Yeah,
really not calling a king more than like 10, 20% of the time, regardless of what we do.
yeah, maybe even lower.
Yeah, so I think we should just bet what's good versus an ace.
Do you think we could craft a line where we don't triple barrel, where we get called by a king for more money?
I don't think we could check turn after because his flop calling range is so strong and so capable of calling a turn barrel. I don't think we could check turn.
Could we ever check flop and then barrel bigger on turn and river and get called for more money?
I would just be like, I would just try and make people make bad calls because I feel like it's M tops and everyone's just likes to call and not gonna fold an ace or call at least two with a king, possibly three or whatever.
Yeah, I guess it's hard to say up front whether we think he'd call three with the king or just only two with the king. But if he's going to call two with the king, we might as well make it the
Yeah.
first two and maybe free roll our chance of getting a third call.
Yeah,
Okay, I like it.
cool. Okay, so you raise ace nine. That's good. Thoughts on betting here as opposed to checking?
I I looking at it now, I like betting. We kind of talked about this in like take 1 through 19 of this video,
Yeah.
and I think betting an ace here is best just because he's going to have some small pocket pairs in his range that he called with pre, but he's also going to have like lesser aces sometimes based on how stationary we know he is now. And also the fact that there's a potential flush draw on the board. I could still get calls from like really random suited connectors that he has in his range. Like if he has like a 6-7 of spades or like a 7-8 of spades, they don't even need to exclusively be those two spade combos. Like he could have like Jack 9 of spades here.
Yeah.
I like betting overwhelmingly more than checking back now. But I think based on like the history of the previous hand, I think we literally just played the previous hand with him where we like tripled him
Yeah.
and we got him off on the river even when we didn't want him to. I just didn't want to like get myself into like some guessing like level war if this guy was gonna like check raise after being over it after getting tripled the last hand. So even though that happens so rarely, I think now I just like betting.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can assume that he's stationary from last hand. Like, we just called two bets and then folded river. We didn't see what he had. Like, he could have potentially folded like an ace there too. So,
If I'm thinking of the right guy, though, I've gone over this since like our previous recording, and I think he like turns out to be like a pretty ridiculous station. So I know we have like the power of retrospect now, but I think I like betting either way. I think like face up against a regular opponent, I would bet here too.
yeah. As for getting check raise, I think on a, like ace X boards like this, I don't think we get check raise too often. Like, people don't really check raise bluff ace high boards too often, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like low boards are like way more likely to be check raise, or like king 7-2 or something. I just feel like people's check raise percentage. I think if you go to hold a manager filter how often you get check raise on ace high boards and compare it to all other boards, I bet it's way lower. Anyways, so I'm not too worried about getting check raise. And plus, like you said, we get value from so much worse. I think when it's good to check back in spots like this, when it's good to like check back hands that have hands like this, doesn't necessarily have to be like this exact board is like when you don't get called by worse too often, when your opponent's pretty aggro too, like pretty likely to just barrel turn, barrel river, and then you'll have like a pretty good top pairs type hand to call down with.
Yep. I was
Um,
thinking I would check back too, like if this board was ace 4-4 with no flush draw. I think I would check back just knowing that I have so much of his like pre-flop defend range, like drawing dead to like backdoor perfect. I could check back safely on those boards and like potentially turn it into like bluff catching or like make turn and river bets, and, like try and induce like tooling out.
yeah, less drawy board. This is like definitely better on a less drawy board to like check back a hand like this for sure. Anyways, you check, and then we bet turn, pretty standard. We bet riv.
Yeah, I think I bet Riv again with this sizing, just hoping that I get called by a 10. I felt like his call on the turn has to be a 10 most of the time, and like maybe lesser aces sometimes as well. But I thought I would get like leads from lesser aces here. So, although I think like when we initially talked about this, I said I was also kind of weary of. I don't know if I was necessarily weary of better aces because it's so hard for him to have better aces here, but I thought that like a lot of players, I think too, especially like weaker players in 33s and 22s, don't really think of like what my hands could potentially be. So when they see an overcard that's like an overcard to their pair, they're scared of it more than they should be, I think.
Yeah.
So like if he's calling me with like a 10 jack here, I wanted to make it a sizing on the river that wouldn't like scare him off a 10 if that's what he had in his hand. Because I think he might perceive this card as being like ridiculously bad for him, even though it shouldn't be most of the time.
Yeah, there's just so many tens in his range. His line is so consistent with a 10, whereas like there's not as many ace X in his range. His line isn't as consistent with an ace.
And if it's like a blown flush draw that doesn't have a king in it, I mean, I'm not getting paid regardless, but I wanted to maximize getting called by a 10 here.
Yeah. He also has some like king queen king jack in his range too.
Yeah, you had said that. I mean, like, I don't see that often in like really bad tourney. Like, I could see that maybe from like I don't see that from a villain in this type of tournament all that often. I don't see like a king jack king queen hand show up unsuited here
Yeah.
like almost ever. I know like in like more meta heavy tournaments with like regs who know like king 10 or like excuse me king queen or king jack could be good there. Like perhaps you get calls there more often, but I don't really ever see that in these tourneys. But maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. I wasn't thinking he'd call with like, mm, thinking like, oh, he's light or something. Just I think he would just call be like, might call just being like, oh, I have a gut shot and I could hit a king or a queen. That I would think that's why I thought he would call with those hands rather than, oh, I might have the best hand because this guy checked back flop. Then
Yeah, he
this,
might be more inclined to call those hands too because I check back flop, and maybe he thinks like hitting one of those cards is good, assuming I have a 10 or something. But I don't know. I don't think like we ever bet 47, whatever I bet here, like 47.85, and like he shows up with like an unsuited in spades king hand. I don't think that ever happens.
yeah, maybe not. I don't know. I think it happens like a very small percentage of the time at least, but it's hard
So then
to.
what are you sizing here? Like if we even if like we give some very discounted percentage of the time he shows up with a king, but we assume the rest of it's a 10 and sometimes like a really bad ace. What sizing are you making the river?
So if
So I
he,
think I clicked the 1/3 pot button on the river. It looks like, or like my 37% button on full tilt.
yeah, so we would be pretty sure most of his range is a 10, and our sizing if he has a 10 is going to be pretty small. That's the sizing we're going to go. A very small percentage of his range is kings, and that's calling a pretty big bet.
Agreed.
A decent amount of his range is like an ace. That's calling anything. So I don't know, somewhere between like I definitely lean towards the what we'd bet for like a 10. But like so if we'd bet like 9K for an ace and like 4K for a 10, I'd probably like to bet like around 6K or like 5,500 or something.
I could see 5,500, but again, that's because I think I weigh on like the smaller side when it comes to betting. I always get knocked for that too.
Yeah.
I just think like I think kind of what happens to a fault too is like I find like where I think the majority of his range hovers to, which I think in both instances, the last hand we agreed that his majority of his range hovers toward an equilibrium of a king, and the majority of his range here hovers toward an equilibrium of a 10. And I just like focus too much on that part and go like, okay, what's it going to take to get called by that equilibrium part of his range, and never really account for like the fact he could be higher, like he could be toward the top.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe I should like just start going like with what I initially would go with, and then like add 15% to it, or like whatever it was that
I think
I would
your
bet.
I think your bet sizes are always like within a reasonable band, like all the time. So
I think they're always toward the bottom of that reasonable band though, and if
yeah,
there's like more value to be had, like you should always be trying to squeeze that like extra bit of juice
yeah,
out of the orange, you know.
yeah. If you're just betting the optimal amount versus a 10, I definitely think you're losing value here when he has an ace or he has a king. I think you got to bet a little bit more than at least a little bit more than what you would versus a 10 for sure.
Okay.
So you bet like that. He folds anyways. Oh wells. Gotta remember to run through all these hands, get game flow.
Yeah, but if we keep doing that, I mean, I see on the screen we're missing like I'm not playing a hand for a little while. I think at this pace, if we keep doing that, this is gonna be like a 45-part series.
Okay.
And at that point, we might as well release the gag reel too, because
Might as well, yeah.
yeah, God, what do you think of ISOing here? I don't know. Like looking at it now, I don't know that I really like it too much. It can't kill me that bad just because he's only got like 13 bigs. But
Um,
I mean, ISOing the big blind. Like obviously, we're
yeah.
calling the under the gun shove, or essentially, what is the shove?
What do you think we should be thinking about? Like, what hands do you think would be definite, like, hands you just call, and what hands would be. just shoves for
Like
sure.
all my pairs should be shoves, I believe. Any pair that I'm gonna go with against him should be a shove, just because he has so many like random overcard hands that would be flipping against me that I don't want to like encourage to come into this pot.
Yeah.
But
What
I just feel like when I shove over him with like a hand like ace nine, every single time I get called, I'm just dominated.
maybe?
Like
Yeah.
I think the only benefit I see is like maybe ace ten folds here. But
Yeah.
I think like anytime I get called on this ISO, I'm getting screwed. I think I'm getting called by like ace jack or better. I think I'm getting called by like nines or better, and like maybe eights is like the last hand he calls with.
Yeah. So what do you think would be a good hand to just call here then?
Um, like any ace lesser than this, I think would be a good hand to just call with. Just because I just think that if I shove like a lesser hand, like a lesser ace here, I could. Yeah, but then I don't like just calling either. So I guess like it seems really razor thin to me. But
Yeah.
like maybe I'm just looking too closely at it.
Well, let's think about like so if we're in spots like this, you think about like what makes calling better. So what type of hands would we prefer to call? So like obviously besides like aces and kings, like for calling we're gonna get to post flop a fair bit with this guy like overcalling. So we're gonna need some like post flop playability.
So like Jack ten suiteds would be good hands to just call with here.
Yeah. I mean maybe those would be better as calls, but I mean
Because
you're
I mean like those hands face up against KLA, they have some showdown value or like they have some potential of winning the pot, but they don't like stand to be the outright best hand. But I
yeah.
still don't think they qualify as folds just for that reason.
Yeah.
I wish he was deeper because if he was like 19 bigs deeper, a lot of hands become like a lot more profitable by just calling. I think, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm just being a little bit too perfectionist here. I just saw like shoving here, and I thought like there's no way I ever get called by worse. But I guess like he doesn't have worse enough that it becomes like a bad equity to shove or bad equity calc to shove here.
Yeah, I think if we're shoving hands, it should be like those Broadway type hands that are gonna play well post and never get called by worse. So if we're gonna just flat anything, I think it should be lows. But like the ace X just play too poorly post, in my opinion. We should just
Yeah, I
ship.
agree.
And when we have hands like, but like if we have hands like King Queen and shit, shoving and getting him the fold aces are isn't too terrible. But I guess he's just flatting those aces anyways. That isn't like those. So if we just call, he's flatting those weak aces anyways, and that isn't like a terrible spot for us either.
Yeah, there's only a very specific board that like really sucks for us, like an ace king X board or like an ace queen X board or something like that.
Yeah,
All right, we can scoot ahead. I think I've kind of worked out the little mess in my head that I had with this hand.
I just think like spots like this are interesting, like when to flat, when to ISO, and I guess you just think about like what range they're gonna get in if you flat, what range they're gonna get in with if you jam, post flop playability, shit like that. When making this decision, rather than like auto ISOing, which I think is what most people do. And you lost the all in again.
I think it's my favorite hand though, so I'm not even that mad about it.
All right, so I guess this is good for the first part. We got it broken down into three parts because we suck. So, so yeah, this is Daryl Jace for TPE with Chris Moon. Peace, guys.
See you next week.
Next week.